The mist clung to the cobblestones like a living thing, curling around Evelyn's ankles as she walked through the ruins of her family estate. The once grand manor, now little more than a skeleton of stone and timber, towered behind her, its windows' dark eyes staring blankly into the fog. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, shivering, though the night air was not cold. Something else stirred in the shadows, something old and watchful, and Evelyn could feel it pressing against the edges of her mind. Her husband, Thomas, had died 6 months ago. 6 months in which the world had turned gray and heavy. Even the sun had seemed to lose its warmth. The townspeople whispered about him as if his death were a sin, though Evelyn had never blamed him. The illness had been sudden, cruel, and the doctors powerless. Now, alone, she wandered among the crumbling halls of her home, feeling both abandoned and strangely free. The wind carried a distant sound, like music, soft and impossible, echoing through the ruins. Evelyn's heart quickened. She had heard the legends of the old chapel on the estate's far edge, stories of spirits who walked in the night, of whispers that promised both danger and wonder. Some said that those who entered the chapel never returned the same. Others said it was cursed, but Evelyn, grieving and restless, had no mind for superstition. She wanted answers. She wanted to feel alive again. She crossed the overgrown gardens, the stones slick beneath her boots, and reached the chapel. The doors were blackened with age, the wood cracked and splintered, yet they held firm against time. Evelyn hesitated for only a moment before pushing the doors open. A cold gust swept through the nave, and 100 years of dust rose in a silver haze. Her eyes fell upon the altar, still intact despite decay, and then the shadows at the edges of the room shifted. 2 figures stepped forward, and Evelyn froze. Their movements were silent, graceful, predatory. They were identical in every way, tall, pale, and impossibly beautiful. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, red as the embers of a dying fire. Black hair fell to their shoulders, framing faces that were both cruel and inviting. She could not look away. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. One stepped closer, the shadow of his form sliding along the floor like water. "I am Kyle," he said, his voice a soft echo that seemed to touch her mind rather than her ears. "And this is Riven." He gestured to the other, who nodded in silence, his expression unreadable. Evelyn swallowed, her heart racing. There was something terrifying about them, something that made the hair on her arms rise. But there was also an undeniable pull, a magnetic force she could not resist. She had never believed in ghosts, let alone creatures such as these, yet here they were, real and alive, or perhaps not entirely alive. You're vampires," she said finally, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. Cale's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Names and titles matter little here," he said. "You feel it, don't you? The weight of the past, the shadow of loss. You are unclaimed, and yet the night calls to you." Evelyn took a step back, shaking her head. I don't understand. Why are you here? What do you want from me?" Riven finally spoke, his voice softer than Cale's but no less commanding. "We seek nothing from you, Evelyn. Only that you hear what the night has to say. You are interesting to us. Fragile, yes, but not weak. Broken, but capable of more than you know." The words made Evelyn flush with confusion and fear. Fragile, broken, capable. She had spent months believing she was none of these things, yet somehow the twins saw the truth in her, the raw edges of grief that she herself could not confront. "Why me?" she asked, stepping further into the chapel. "Why now?" Kyle tilted his head, studying her like a painter studying a canvas. "Because the night is patient, and it chooses carefully. You have never had to before, Evelyn." But perhaps it is time to learn that even in darkness, there are new beginnings. Evelyn felt a strange warmth in her chest. The words were cryptic, almost playful, yet they carried a weight she could not ignore. She wanted to run, to flee into the safety of the mist outside, yet her feet felt rooted to the stone floor. Something in her, long buried under sorrow, stirred. "First time for everything," Riven said, almost softly, a faint smile touching his lips. The words hung in the air, teasing and terrifying at once. Evelyn's breath caught. She didn't understand. She wanted to ask what he meant, but before she could, Kyle reached out, his fingers brushing her hand with a touch that was electric yet gentle. A shiver ran through her body, and she realized she was trembling, not from fear alone. "You feel it too," Kyle said. "The connection, the pull." I don't know what you mean," she whispered. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the strange sensations that flooded her heart and senses. She felt alive in a way she hadn't since her husband's death, yet terrified by it. Riven stepped closer, his presence calm and grounding. "Evelyn, you have been alone too long. You have mourned, yes, but life and choice are waiting for you. We are not here to take, only to awaken, to show what you have forgotten." Evelyn shook her head, trying to push the thought away. But the twins' gazes were like gravity, pulling her toward them, toward a destiny she had never imagined. She wanted to run, yet her body refused. The night had caught her, and she could not escape. "Why me?" she asked again, voice trembling. "Why now?" Cale leaned closer, so that his face was inches from hers. "Because you are ready. Your grief has made you strong even if you do not see it. You have loved once and lost. You have been betrayed by fate, and yet here you are, unbroken in spirit. That is rare and precious." Evelyn felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had spent months believing she was weak, believing she was nothing. Yet here were two beings, terrifying, eternal, and utterly otherworldly, telling her that she was strong, that she mattered. You make no sense," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That is the nature of the night," Riven said. "It does not need to make sense. It simply is. And sometimes it offers a choice, to remain lost, or to step into something greater than yourself." Evelyn's mind raced. Choice, power, danger. All the stories she had heard of vampires, of ancient curses and immortal bargains crowded her thoughts. Yet beneath it all, she felt a strange longing, a desire to understand what lay beyond fear. "You speak of choice," she said slowly. "But I am a widow. I have nothing left to offer." Kyle's hand moved to her cheek, his touch gentle, reverent even. "Nothing? You offer the most precious thing of all, courage, the courage to live again, to face the darkness without fear. That is more than many ever possess." Riven nodded. "And you will not face it alone, Evelyn. We will walk with you, but only if you allow it. Only if you are ready to see what the night can reveal." The chapel grew quieter, the shadows deepening. Evelyn felt the weight of her grief pressing down on her once more, yet something else stirred within her. Curiosity, wonder, and a strange spark of hope. The twins did not promise safety, nor did they promise ease, but they promised something else. "First time for everything," Cale repeated, almost teasingly. "Do you trust us?" Evelyn's heart pounded. Trust. It was a word that had lost all meaning since Thomas's death, yet in the presence of these beings, in the echoing shadows of the chapel, it felt alive again, fragile and frightening. She began, but her voice faltered. She did not know if she trusted them, not fully, but she knew that she could not turn away, not now. Something in her, long buried under sorrow and fear, wanted to step into the unknown, to discover what life, or unlife, might offer. Cale and Riven watched her, their expressions unreadable, yet filled with a quiet intensity that made her pulse quicken. The twins were not human, yet they were not monsters either, not entirely. They were something in between, something that existed in the shadows of myth and memory, in the spaces where fear and longing entwined. Evelyn took a hesitant step forward, and then another. The mist outside the chapel swirled, thick and cold, as if to push her back, but she ignored it. She wanted to see, to understand, to feel. "You will learn," Riven said softly, "that the night is patient, that it waits for those who are ready. And tonight, you are ready." Cale's eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and for the first time since her husband's death, Evelyn felt something she had not thought possible, the thrill of being seen, truly seen and chosen, not as a widow, not as a victim, but as someone who could step into a story larger than herself. The chapel seemed to hold its breath, the shadows deepening around them. Evelyn's pulse raced. She was frightened, yes, but also exhilarated. The night had claimed her attention, if not her soul, and she could not look away. For the first time in months, Evelyn allowed herself to imagine a future where darkness did not mean despair, where loss could be transformed into strength, and where she might, just might, discover a new kind of love and belonging. The twins stepped closer, and Evelyn's breath caught. She knew, without knowing how, that her life had changed forever. The past, the grief, the solitude, they were still there, but now shadowed by something new, something dangerous, and something achingly beautiful. And then Cale spoke again, his voice a whisper that seemed to echo through her very bones. "First time for everything, Evelyn. Are you ready to see what that means?" Evelyn's heart thundered in her chest. She did not answer with words. She did not need to. Her eyes met theirs, wide with fear, longing, and a strange spark of courage. The choice was hers. The night waited, and whatever lay ahead, it would change her forever. Outside, the fog thickened. Inside, the chapel pulsed with the quiet power of eternity. And for the first time in months, Evelyn felt the stirrings of something she had thought lost forever. Life. The night had chosen her, and she had, in her own way, chosen it back. The mist outside the chapel had not lifted by morning. Instead, it pressed closer, curling around the ruined walls like fingers reaching for something lost. Evelyn had not slept. She had spent the night staring at the glowing eyes of Cale and Riven, wondering what it truly meant when the twins said, "First time for everything." Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her shawl. She had never been this close to creatures so different from humans, yet so compelling. They were terrifying, yes, but there was a strange elegance in their movements, a precision that made her heart ache with fascination. Even the fear she felt seemed alive, sparking a warmth she could not name. Kyle appeared first, stepping silently into the chapel. His eyes caught hers immediately, and a small, knowing smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "You are awake," he said softly. "Good. I hoped you would be. There is much to show you, and little time to waste." Evelyn swallowed hard. "Show me? What do you mean?" Kyle's gaze drifted toward the shadows along the far wall. "Not everything can be explained with words. Some things must be seen. And you, Evelyn, have a courage that longs to understand the unknown." Before she could respond, Riven emerged from the shadows behind Kyle, silent as a whisper, yet radiating calm authority. He studied her with eyes that seemed to peer into the depths of her soul. "Courage," he said, voice soft and steady, "does not mean absence of fear. It means walking forward despite it. That is why we brought you here." You are ready to see what most never will." Evelyn hesitated. The twins had been kind in their own enigmatic way, yet she could not ignore the danger that clung to them. What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Cale and Riven exchanged a glance, identical yet different, a silent understanding passing between them. Cale stepped closer, his presence both protective and intense. "We want nothing from you that you do not offer willingly, only to show you what exists beyond grief, beyond loss, beyond the life you once knew." Evelyn's stomach fluttered. She did not fully understand, but something within her responded to their words. She had spent months mourning, locked in her sorrow. Perhaps it was time to face the unknown. "Then, show me," she whispered, her voice trembling, yet tinged with resolve. The twins nodded in unison, and with that, the chapel seemed to shift. The air thickened, glowing faintly with the reflection of moonlight on stone. Shadows moved along the walls like living things, curling, stretching, and retreating. The twins began to move, stepping into the center of the chapel, their forms fluid and precise, almost like dancers. "You will learn quickly," Riven said, "that in our world, movement is language. It is power. It is control. Watch carefully." Evelyn stepped closer, drawn in despite herself. Cale and Riven began a slow, mesmerizing dance, their steps perfectly synchronized, their shadows stretching and twisting across the walls. Every movement was a story, joy, sorrow, regret, and desire all folded into a language she had never known existed. She realized, with a shiver, that she was learning something important. Not just about them, but about herself. She had spent so long in grief that she had forgotten how to feel alive, how to feel her own power. Watching the twins, she felt it stirring again. Cale's eyes met hers, and Evelyn felt her breath catch. "Do you see?" he asked. "This is not just a dance. It is choice. It is temptation. It is the rhythm of life and unlife." Riven stepped forward, offering his hand to her. "Do you wish to join us?" Evelyn's heart pounded. She had never imagined being here, in this place, with creatures so unlike any human she had ever known. Fear and longing warred within her, yet she lifted her hand slowly, letting it brush against his. The contact sent a shiver up her spine, both chilling and warming her at once. "You are ready," Cale said, his voice low, almost reverent. "To learn, to see, to feel, and perhaps to trust." Evelyn nodded, though her pulse raced like a drum. She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving theirs. The twins guided her through the motions of the dance, their hands steadying her, their presence grounding yet electrifying. She stumbled once, twice, but each time they caught her, their eyes encouraging, never condescending. As the night deepened, Evelyn began to understand the language of the dance. It was not just movement, but a story of survival, of power, of longing, and of restraint. The twins taught her that control was not domination, but balance, that strength could be gentle, and that vulnerability could be a form of courage. The dance ended silently, the shadows retreating to the corners of the chapel. Evelyn's heart raced, and she felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She looked at the twins who stood near her, watching, patient and unreadable. "You are learning quickly," Riven said, "faster than many who have lived for centuries." Evelyn blushed, unsure how to respond. I am trying," she whispered. "I do not even understand all of this, not fully." Kyle stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You do not need to understand fully. Not yet. What matters is that you are willing. That is enough." Evelyn looked into their faces, trying to read them, trying to grasp the enormity of their existence. You You are so different from humans, she said, and yet I feel connected to you in a way I cannot explain. Riven's expression softened slightly. Connection does not always require explanation. Sometimes it simply exists. You feel it because it is true. Evelyn swallowed hard. The truth of his words resonated deep within her. She had felt alone, abandoned by life itself, but now, in this dark chapel, she sensed that something new was possible, something that could awaken her heart again, even if it was terrifying. Kyle stepped even closer, his presence overwhelming but not threatening. Tonight, Evelyn, is the beginning. You will face shadows, and you will discover strength you did not know you had. And perhaps, you will see that desire is not always a sin, nor fear always a chain. It can be a key. The twins' words lingered in the air, poetic and enigmatic, yet filled with promise. Evelyn's pulse quickened as she realized that she had a choice, to remain in her grief or to step fully into the unknown, guided by beings who were more than human, more than myth. As the hours passed, Cale and Riven shared stories of centuries gone by. They spoke of battles, lost loves, kingdoms that had risen and fallen, and of the loneliness that came with eternal life. Evelyn listened, enthralled and horrified in equal measure. She felt the weight of their sorrow and the power of their lives, and she began to see them not just as predators, but as beings who had endured and survived unimaginable pain. I have lived for centuries, Cale said quietly, and yet I have rarely encountered someone like you. Someone who has loved, lost, and still has the courage to face the unknown. That is why we are here, Evelyn, to offer more than companionship, to offer understanding, and perhaps redemption. Riven nodded, his gaze unwavering. We too are bound by choices made long ago, but even we can change if the right soul comes along. Perhaps you are that soul. Evelyn's breath caught. She did not fully understand what they meant, but she felt the weight of their gaze, the pull of their presence. Something deep within her stirred, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and a strange, thrilling hope. The night grew darker, the chapel alive with shadows that moved and whispered. Evelyn felt herself drawn deeper into the twins' world, a world that was terrifying and beautiful, dangerous and compelling. She knew that once she stepped further, there would be no turning back, not completely, and yet she wanted to step forward. First time for everything, Kyle said again, his voice a low murmur. Do you understand now what that means? Evelyn shook her head slowly, though her heart raced. Not fully, but I feel it. I feel it in every part of me. Riven smiled faintly. Good. That is enough for now. Trust is built in moments like these, not in words, but in experience. Tomorrow you will see more, and you will have to choose if you are ready to walk further into the night. Evelyn's mind raced. The twins had shown her glimpses of a world she had never imagined. A world of power, choice, and connection. She felt exhilaration, fear, and longing all at once. The night pressed close around her, and she knew that the coming days would change her life in ways she could not yet comprehend. The chapel grew silent, the shadows folding into the corners. Evelyn felt the twins' eyes upon her, and a shiver ran down her spine. She had taken the first step into a story far larger than herself, and there was no turning back. Outside, the mist swirled, thick and cold, as if warning her of the dangers ahead. Inside, the warmth of the twins' presence held her, steady and demanding, dangerous yet strangely comforting. She understood now that the night was not simply darkness. It was a test, a teacher, and perhaps a guide to something she had thought impossible, life beyond grief, and a heart willing to feel again. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the night within her. She would learn, she told herself. She would face what came. And perhaps she would discover what it meant to live fully, even if the night demanded a price she could not yet name. Cale and Riven watched her, their expressions unreadable yet patient, waiting for her to take the next step. The night stretched before her, filled with shadows, promise, and peril. Evelyn's heart pounded, and for the first time since her husband's death, she felt something she had thought lost forever: hope. And as the moonlight glinted on the chapel's cracked walls, she realized that the story of the night, and of herself, was only just beginning. The hidden passage beneath the chapel was darker than Evelyn had imagined, narrow and winding like the spine of some ancient creature. The air was cool but thick, carrying a faint metallic scent that made her pulse quicken. She followed Cale and Riven without hesitation, her steps tentative yet purposeful. Each stone beneath her feet seemed to hum with an energy she could not name, and the shadows danced as though alive, curling and twisting around the trio. Evelyn's heart raced, not with fear alone, but with a strange mixture of anticipation and awe. She had stepped fully into the twins' world now. There was no turning back. Every choice, every thought, every heartbeat carried weight. She remembered Cale's words from the chapel. The night is patient. It waits for those who are ready. The twins led her to a vast chamber carved from the stone beneath the earth, its walls engraved with symbols that shimmered faintly in the dim light. A single crystal chandelier, dusted with centuries of neglect, hung above them, casting fractured beams that painted the chamber in eerie patterns. Evelyn felt as if she had stepped into a place outside of time, where the boundaries between life and eternity blurred. Cale turned to her, his expression solemn. "This is where the truth must be faced," he said. "Here, the choices of the heart and soul are revealed. And here, you will see the bond that has held Riven and me for centuries." Riven stepped closer, his voice calm yet heavy with meaning. "Our lives are tied together by more than blood. We are bound by a pact made long ago, one that gives us immortality, but also demands sacrifice. To enter fully into our world is to understand what it means to love and to lose, to give and to take, to endure beyond the limits of human life." Evelyn's stomach churned. She had anticipated fear, perhaps danger, but not this. This weight of centuries, this responsibility wrapped in shadows and longing. She felt herself trembling, but she stood her ground. She wanted to understand. She had to. "You speak in riddles," she whispered, "but I want to understand. I want to know, even if it terrifies me." Cale reached out, his hand hovering near hers. "It will terrify you," he admitted, "but only because it is real. Only because it is alive. Only because it matters." Riven moved to the center of the chamber, gesturing to the glowing symbols carved into the walls. "These marks tell the story of our pact," he said. "They speak of power gained, but also of the cost. Every century we have lived with the knowledge that love can bind and also consume." Evelyn took a step closer, studying the symbols. They shimmered faintly, as if acknowledging her presence. She felt a pull in her chest, a vibration in her bones that made her heart ache and soar at the same time. Cale's voice broke the silence, low and urgent. "Evelyn, you must understand this. To accept the bond is to step into eternity with us. To refuse is to remain human, limited, and mortal. Either choice carries consequences. Either choice carries freedom." She swallowed hard, her mind spinning. "And if I choose eternity?" Riven's eyes softened. "Then you share our world. You share our strength, our burdens, our joys, and our sorrows. You become a part of what we are, and we become part of you." Evelyn felt a rush of emotion. Fear, yes, but also longing, fascination, and a strange spark of hope. She had spent months lost in grief, her heart locked behind walls of sorrow. But now, in this chamber, with the twins before her, she felt something she had not felt in months, the possibility of life, of connection, of love renewed. Cale stepped closer, tilting his head to meet her gaze. "You are brave, Evelyn. Braver than you realize. The choice is yours, and only yours. But know this, courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it." Evelyn took a deep breath. The chamber seemed to pulse around her, the light of the chandelier catching on the carved symbols, reflecting in her eyes. She understood now that this was more than a test. It was a chance to reclaim her life, to embrace what she had lost, and perhaps to find something new and enduring. I think I am ready," she said finally, her voice trembling but steady. "I want to see. I want to learn. I want to be part of this world." The twins exchanged a glance, a mixture of relief and solemnity passing between them. Kyle reached out, gently taking her hand. The warmth of his touch was unlike anything she had known, both grounding and electrifying. "Then let the bond begin," Cale said softly. Riven moved closer, placing a hand lightly on her other shoulder. The three of them stood together, their connection palpable, the air charged with energy. Evelyn felt the pull of something vast and eternal, something both frightening and beautiful. She understood that this moment would change her forever. The chamber seemed to shift, the walls glowing brighter, the symbols shimmering with life. Evelyn felt herself drawn into a current she could not resist. Memories of grief, fear, and loss surged within her, but alongside them came strength, clarity, and the stirring of something ancient and powerful. "You are not just accepting us," Riven said, his voice echoing softly. "You are accepting yourself, your courage, your heart, and your capacity to love and be loved." Evelyn closed her eyes, feeling the energy surround her, the pull of the bond threading through her being. She realized that this was more than immortality. It was transformation. It was redemption, not just for the twins, but for herself. She felt her grief lighten, her sorrow temper, her fear soften, replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose and belonging. Kyle's voice was a whisper against her skin. "Do you feel it? The thread that binds us?" "Yes," she breathed, tears stinging her eyes. I feel it." Riven smiled, his gaze steady and warm. "Good. That is enough for now. You have taken the first step, but know this. Eternity is not a gift without responsibility. To walk fully in this world is to accept the consequences of every choice, every heartbeat, every emotion." Evelyn nodded. She understood now that this bond was not merely about power or companionship. It was about courage, trust, and transformation. She had been broken by loss, but now she was stepping into a story larger than herself, one where she could feel, grow, and choose. Cale and Riven stepped back slightly, allowing her space, yet their presence remained close, comforting and commanding. The chamber seemed to breathe with them, alive with the pulse of ancient magic. "You have done well," Kyle said. "Few humans would have faced this. Few would have stood and embraced the unknown. You are exceptional." Evelyn felt her chest swell with a mix of pride and wonder. She had faced fear, grief, and the unknown, and she had not turned away. She had stepped forward, even when every instinct in her body urged her to flee. Riven's hand brushed against hers, a simple gesture, yet it carried weight, meaning, and promise. "And this is only the beginning," he said. "There is much to learn, much to discover, much to experience. Eternity is long, and every moment can be lived fully if you choose to live it with courage and heart." Evelyn nodded again, her heart racing. The night outside pressed close, thick with mist and shadow, but inside she felt warmth, light, and connection. She had chosen to step forward, to embrace the unknown, and in doing so, she had found a new strength within herself. Kyle and Riven moved closer, their presence a silent promise of guidance, protection, and companionship. Evelyn felt the bond tighten, not in fear or control, but in trust, understanding, and shared purpose. She realized that she was no longer just a widow, lost and grieving. She was a participant in something ancient, powerful, and eternal. "You are ready," Kale said, his voice low and steady. "Ready to face the challenges, the choices, the darkness, and the light. Ready to live, truly live, in a way few ever will." Evelyn felt tears spill down her cheeks, not of sorrow, but of release and renewal. She had been broken, yes, but now she was mending. She had stepped into the shadows, yet she had not lost herself. She had found courage, connection, and a glimpse of eternity. Riven's gaze met hers, soft and unwavering. "You have made the right choice," he said. "Not because you are perfect, but because you are brave, because you are willing, because your heart is open, even after all you have lost." Evelyn breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of life and unlife intertwining around her. She was ready. She was alive. She was, perhaps, for the first time since her husband's death, whole. Kale's hand lingered near hers, warm and steady. "First time for everything," he whispered, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "And you have embraced it. The night has claimed you, not as a victim, but as a participant in its story, a story of courage, love, and redemption." Evelyn's heart swelled. She understood now what the twins had meant all along. The first time for everything was not simply a promise of danger or intimacy, it was a promise of awakening, a promise that even in darkness one could find light. And even in loss, one could find new beginnings. The chamber seemed to hum around them, alive with possibility. Evelyn looked at Kale and Riven, her eyes bright with tears and determination. She had chosen to step into their world, and in doing so, she had reclaimed herself. The night outside began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, yet the chamber remained untouched by the sun. Evelyn realized that the bond she had accepted would not fade with the light. It was eternal, like the twins themselves, but not oppressive. It was a bond of trust, courage, and shared purpose. And as the first rays of light brushed the edges of the chamber, Evelyn felt the promise of the future, long, uncertain, yet filled with wonder, connection, and the possibility of love renewed. She had faced fear, embraced the unknown, and stepped into a story far larger than herself. The twins watched her, their expressions unreadable yet filled with quiet approval. The bond was formed, the pact accepted, and the path ahead lay open, shadowed but illuminated by courage, trust, and the awakening of a heart that had once been lost. Evelyn breathed deeply, feeling the weight of eternity and the lightness of newfound strength. She was no longer merely a widow. She was part of a story that spanned centuries, a story of darkness and light, fear and courage, loss and redemption. The night had changed her. The twins had shown her what it meant to live again, and she knew deep in her soul that this was only the beginning.